with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Welcome into the program, everyone. Sorry about the mix-up there at the beginning, but hey, we're just going to fly right by it. So everyone, welcome into the program. We have a great show planned for you today where we will have, as scheduled, our cybersecurity expert, where we will be talking everything cybersecurity, have a lot of great stories, a lot of great articles, and of course, no one better to go over them with us than the one, the only, Mr. Scott Schober. He is, of course, Computer America's resident cybersecurity expert, and of course, as a day job, does just about anything you need to do with, catching the bad guys or just detecting any kind of intrusion, things like that. They, Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and of course, he's the author of Hacked Again, a great book, and I believe last month we also mentioned that he is working on Hacked Again, or a follow-up book. So, hey, if this is your first time tuning in to listen to Scott Schober, you're in for a treat. So with that being said, before we get started, first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest website, any articles that we go over, any YouTube videos that we show, anything that we talk about will be included in the show notes. You can find that there. And also be sure to check out any reviews. We have some reviews that will be going up here shortly at our website. And on top of that, check out the live video portion, which is just, hey, computeramerica.com, and the video stream's right there front and center. Very, very easy to find. So let's see, with that being said, it looks like we're having a little bit of problem with connecting to the network, but you know what, we're just going to keep going and it should settle itself out. But anyone out there listening, if obviously if you miss any part of this interview for technical difficulties or any other reason, check out the podcast. It's today's show in its entirety, rebroadcast wherever podcasts are heard. So with that being said, everyone out there, you can still hear us. Let's go ahead and get things started. So joining us today, as I said before, is none other than Scott Schober. He has been on the show for a number of years, and happy to have him on. And Scott, how you doing? Welcome on to Computer America once again.
Doing great, and great to be back there, Ben. How you doing?
Not bad. Getting over a cold, so I apologize if I sound a bit weird. But
Sorry to hear.
I got the flu shot and I was like, I am good to go for a whole year. And then a stupid cold took me out for like 5 days. I don't get it, but I digress. Thank you for coming back on. And before we get started, why don't we go ahead and just introduce people to yourself? Give us a bit of background on yourself and your intro into the world of security.
Absolutely. Again, I'm Scott Schober, President CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and author of Hacked Again, as you kindly noted there, and I just finished up actually my second book. It's now officially titled Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, and it'll be coming out, it looks like, around end of second quarter, third quarter of this year. So you
Very
can
cool.
start to see that at Amazon, the website, and all that other stuff. And again, I focus on a company here developing wireless threat detection tools that are used to keep government facilities secure, correction facilities secure, anything that has to do with wireless and cybersecurity. We're trying to make the world a safer place, so keep them busy in that front.
Perfect. So with let's see, yeah, and so I think with that being said, why don't we go ahead and anyone out there watching on the video portion, we're of course going to be following along with these different articles. But every month you send over a number of articles, and it never really slows down. That's the world of cybersecurity, the stories about intrusions or data loss or new ways that people are compromising either companies or systems or things like that, or even just like security cameras and webcams. I mean, there was a big story, I don't think you included in here, about Google, who through their Nest products had a bunch of secret microphones,
Yeah.
and like stories like that didn't even make your cut. But yeah, like the stories don't seem to be slowing down. In fact, there's more than ever.
Yeah, you make a fabulous point. When you think about Alexa and Google Nest and all these other things that are now connected to the Internet of Things, and we've talked about this many times before, it opens up Pandora's box for different ways that people can access our personal information, spy on us, record on us, so on and so forth. I use Nest throughout my house, several different types of devices, so immediately that caught my eye and concern there. So I think people do have to be aware and make sure that they secure their devices with real strong passwords, long passwords there, and be aware what potentially could be vulnerable.
Right. And although I will say just a quick tangent about that, like I guess the big story there was that there were microphones and cameras that Google did not explicitly say there were microphones in devices. I guess for Google's part, this, because you build a lot of this equipment yourself. Things like microphones and cameras and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, they're really not that. They're really not that expensive. So I guess in Google's mind, what they did was they put in microphones that they didn't actually use, but for future, it's cheaper to, I guess, include it and then utilize it later than it is to, it's so cheap. It made sense to, just throw it in there even if you're not currently using it. So, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like when the hardware is that inexpensive, we're going to start seeing microphones and cameras just about everywhere, and we already do, really.
Yeah, and the volumes that they're actually building stuff, probably the cost of an actual microphone, a speaker, this or that on a physical piece of hardware is somewhere in the pennies. So the cost is a no-brainer to put it on there. The sheer mistake they made was just not putting it on the specification sheet, and that was their bad. And they said, "Hey, we're sorry." The sinister person that's looking at it from an espionage or spying standpoint is saying, sure, they knew about it. What do you mean they forgot? They just didn't want to tell the public. So you could look at it both ways, I guess. But the good news is they came clean. They apologized. And if nothing else, it's really just a warning to all of us as consumers, as tech lovers. Just because we assume something is or isn't on the spec, we got to do a little homework ourselves and do some digging just to make sure something is really secure.
It's very important to check out some of those videos of like the teardowns where people actually take it apart and analyze everything that they use. Although I will say that I didn't come down too hard on Google, kind of like you said, because for people to say, "Oh my God, there's a secret microphone in this camera that I put in my home," I don't like. I feel like any semblance of like, "Hey, this thing's spying on me," and it's a camera. I was like, like maybe if it was like a toaster or something, but or like an Amazon microwave and it had a microphone in or something like that, maybe. But a camera, I can kind of give it to them. So, but like I said, that's not one of our stories. So you sent over a couple, Scott, and a lot of great ones, a lot of terrifying ones, and I think this first one that you sent over about UConn Health. And if, we could talk about this and then we could, kind of branch this off into a topic of why medical data seems to be like the most valuable kind of data that these people are trying to hit.
I think it's because it's so rich, and that's what hackers are really growing toward. Instead of just looking to perform very basic theft or ID theft, they want to take it to the next level where it's tied in with medical and healthcare because the sheer value of it goes up tenfold. And the additional information, and in this case, even though it was a small number, Social Security numbers were tied in there with date of birth, address that's compromised, some billing information, appointment information. So it's a nice, rich data set that can be used for somebody that's trying to perform medical identity theft.
Yeah, and looking at the numbers here, so the first number that I think is drawing for a lot of people, 326,000 patients notified of a recent data security incident. Now, here's the thing. This is something that, we've tried to talk about before, and it's not the easiest thing, but at the same time, it probably should be. And this is something that that people, I think, are starting to really take note of, is that this, let's see, email accounts were attacked on December 24th. So obviously, the day before Christmas, 2018. And let's see, this was just published yesterday. They notified law enforcement and they're doing this and that. But at the same time, they sent letters out, and we're about 2 months out, just a little over 2 months. Do you think that the time to notify people that they've lost their their personal data, do you think 2 months is too long, or do you think they kind of handled this appropriately by, law enforcement first, the people second, or what do you think about 2 months?
Well, I think hearing it up front, it sounds like a long time frame. If you were one of those victims that were notified, the natural thought in your mind would be, why in the world did it take you 2 months to figure this out? The damage may already be done. My information's sold. I'm in trouble, so on and so forth. In reality, the breach investigation part often takes so much time because you got to dig through layers of things. You got to go through the archives back on the server there, the history, the backups, so you could really pinpoint when the breach took place, what was actually compromised, and so on and so forth. It's not something that could be done in a few hours, a few days, or even a few weeks likely. So 2 months is probably somewhat reasonable in this type of situation. You would hope that things are getting better where people could be informed much quicker, and I think in the future that's what we're going to start to see. These instant that a breach happens, they can react to it and they'll be better prepared. But there's a lot of things that come into play, and in this case, most likely also, the insurance company comes in, legal's going to come in, your chief information security officer's got to weigh in. So it involves a lot of hands in the pie, I guess you could say. So again, 2 months probably reasonable in this particular case, in my opinion.
This article that you sent over, and this is from the hospital here, or at least a hospital review website. They don't say exactly how this kind of happened. And I'm not sure if it was listed elsewhere, but how do you think this actually? Do you think someone just accidentally clicked a link? Do you think someone set up some permissions incorrectly? I mean, losing these kind of databases is not uncommon, especially things like date of birth and email addresses, social security numbers. That's a pretty big one. But how are most of these done, or maybe how do you think this was? How this happened?
It could be a couple different ways. Typically, I think it's someone is a little lax on the inside that has access to this information in their database system there. Be it again, goes back to phishing email comes in, looks innocent, they click on it. Unfortunately, malware gets downloaded, it's spread throughout the network system, and then it goes about and starts collecting all of these patient records and their personal information, only for the hacker to then pull it out after some period of time. A lot of times people think hackers jump in, grab stuff, and take off with it. Often that's not the case. Actually, they'll plant the malware. It'll collect in the background a ton of personal information that then will later be retrieved, and it could be months, could be 6 months later, so they have enough information that's current and voluminous enough so they can actually cash in on it. And in this case, when you have hundreds of thousands of records, you could then parse that up and sell it to multiple different bad guys over the dark web, and you could make some serious cash for it. Yeah. They may be able to fetch $10, $20 per record in something like this, which translates to a significant amount of money, as opposed to just a basic database with name, date of birth, and maybe password to hack into somebody's email or something is worth very little, if anything, these days.
Right, and of course, went to the website that they kind of pulled this from, and they said that someone illegally accessed a limited number of employee accounts. That kind of leads me to believe that, just kind of weak passwords, weak usernames, weak passwords seems to be, kind of what led to Maybe it's like they found like a record of nurses or doctors, and it was like first initial, last name, and then the password, something simple, and hey, you're in, and you get access to all that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
it's really not much more complicated than that. You're right. It's not Hollywood. It's not glamorous, but like you said, it makes you money, and I guess and before we move on, I guess on top of that, the I guess how recent a document is, like even if it's the same kind of information that's already been out there, maybe you feel like, hey, through Equifax or something like that, my information is already out there. What does it matter? The more people who are, I guess, compromised in these, in these little, I 300, 326,000, I can't say little, these smaller, more recent attacks, I guess the freshness of the data is more important than, I guess, like, just the data that's been out there before, correct? Like, because, people assume that if, let's say, you come across a trove of email addresses and user information and, physical addresses that are maybe 3 years old, a lot of those are going to be, not that good anymore. But if it's a month old or a week old, those are going to be a lot more expensive and a lot more attractive to hackers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If we think about even an analogy that probably many business owners are used to, you maintain your own internal database of your customers. Oftentimes you'll have some customer information. Maybe it's a name and an email address, but you always wish you had their physical address or other pertinent information so you could now develop a better relationship with them. You can hire a company that will then fill in all the blanks to give you complete contact information, buying power, number of employees, so on and so forth. The same thing hackers do. As you mentioned, if they have your address, they know you're a Yahoo email user, they know this, they know that, but all they need is one more piece of information to make your account very valuable. Maybe it's the date of birth, maybe it's the social security number. So they'll take different databases of compromised information, merge them, and once they have that piece, your record is worth $1. Now that they have that missing piece, now it's worth $20. You can instantly see how they could monetize that and take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Now, I think we're going to move on from that. And you sent over this YouTube video. This is actually by, hey, your company, Berkeley Varitronics Systems. And so let's go ahead and pop that.
Let's bring in cybersecurity.
Hey, there you go. Actually, hey, we can
Security and technology expert Scott Schober. He's the CEO at Berkeley Varitronics Systems. Scott.
Hey, he said it better than I could. So, there's a video. We're going to put that on mute, closed caption it. But, you put up this video of you on I-24 News talking about, border wall solutions. So, obviously, Computer America, tech show, not a politics show, but there are rumblings happening at the border. And I guess a big solution to that, other than putting up a giant physical barricade, regardless of what you think of that, technology is going to play a big role. We've already seen the utilization of drones. We've seen the utilization of, a lot of different, kind of technology utilized. And I guess this is where we kind of bring you in. And what are smart walls, and how are, I guess either smart devices, technology, Internet of Things, what kind of technology makes a smart wall?
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of prefaced this where you guys don't get into the world of politics, and I concur. I try to avoid that like the plague if possible. However, technology tends to cross in this section here. So thinking just about smart walls, it's really, we're very accustomed to walls for protection, fences around our homes. You think about the Great Wall in China, so on and so forth. They have their place. However, I think everybody now is at the point where they're starting to realize, regardless of their political affiliation, that using technology as a smart wall, and what we're talking about is motion sensors, video cameras, drone detection, as you touched on there, radar, and one of the areas that we focus on is cell phone detection coupled with direction-finding antennas. Utilizing these various forms of technology over certain areas of a wall, not necessarily the entire length, 2,000 miles plus of a wall, but rather in certain key pockets where there is a lot of influx of illegal crossings, it makes sense and it's very cost effective. as opposed to building this giant physical infrastructure. Everybody starts to realize when people travel from point A to point B, and if they're doing it illegally to get past a wall, 9 out of 10 times they've got a cell phone to coordinate all the activity. Run, duck, hide behind the rock, somebody's coming a half mile away, so on and so forth. So what we do is our cell phone detection devices could be placed on a wall with direction-finding antennas pointed in very specific locations. We've also sold sensors that are buried underground, right under the surface of the ground, to, again, pick up any flurry of cell phone activity. This, coupled with some of the other technology, is very, very powerful for Border Patrol agents to be able to move in quickly where there's something very suspicious. The other thing is you don't have to now hire hundreds of thousands of physical people and vehicles and all the other infrastructure that's required to do it from a physical standpoint. And that's what most people tend to focus on when they focus on the wall, and it's probably because the powers at the top keep talking about the physical wall. But I think really fundamentally everybody's on the same page. It's really about smart technology, using a more approach that's a smart wall that will greatly aid in keeping things more secure for everyone.
Yeah, it's that whole monitoring by exception. It's not about having cameras or even eyes on every 10 feet of the wall, but rather it's about being able to respond with the appropriate force when there is a disturbance somewhere. And you develop the kind of systems at Berkeley Varitronics Systems that can detect this kind of thing. I mean, although I will say I have not heard that that smartphones and cell phones were such a big part of border crossings. Like, really you always assume it's just, people, migrants, and, they're dashing across the border or that kind of thing, jumping over walls. But I guess you're right. I mean, I suppose it is a bit more coordinated when it comes to, evading the current system that's there. So you're saying that obviously this, the things that you make, just by virtue of being able to detect that, it will cut down on, I guess, before you build anything else, before you do anything else, detecting it is probably much more effective than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same true is for other sensor technologies, be it radar or LiDAR or some of the video imaging systems that are very advanced now. Along with wireless detection, it gives you a head start. Imagine if you knew somebody suspicious is approaching a spot they shouldn't be, but you're getting heads up a half a mile ahead. That could alert you enough time to dispatch a drone to fly in and get a closer look. That could alert you enough to whoever local Border Patrol crossing, they're parked in their vehicle a half mile away. They could drive over so they could be ready to react if something happens. All of those things give you a nice heads up so you can really be proactive and be preventative and almost like a deterrent. And that's what starts to happen when you're using smart technology. Couple all these various sensors along with a good, artificial intelligence, it could actually start to help you see a predictive path of what people might do illegally. So it's very, very powerful. And how that could all be remotely sent back to a central spot to monitor is even more powerful because it lets people make decisions on the fly as opposed to it already happened and now we're trying to investigate it and figure it out. We've been selling actively our product called the Wolfhound Pro. It's a cell phone detection engine coupled with a direction-finding antenna on it. And literally Border Patrol agents, as they're driving around, they are aiming this in spots where they can't get to, high up toward a mountain. They're trying to look for any spot where there's a flurry of cell phone activity, and that will give them heads up so they could be prepared, especially if there's weapons involved or something else. Drugs are being smuggled across, all kinds of scary things that happen. Giving them early detection and alert can surely save a life, and it could make a difference in stopping crimes from happening.
Right, and as much as I know the I guess the stigma around YouTube comments, I couldn't help but go to the comments, and one of the comments there brings up some decent points. But At the same time, they're talking about like the cost of this kind of unit, although, the cost of implementing anything across an 1,800-mile stretch of land is going to be, very expensive. And, maybe sensors are going to be the most cost effective regardless of any solution. But and this is something that I see, and another commenter said something like all tech can be hacked and defeated, and then the other commenter was like, well, what about wireless and it can be hacked into, or if it's wired, that kind of thing. Like, people put so much energy into thinking about, again, kind of the Hollywood dream fantasy of technology, where it's like, here we go. We're going to take our computer or our laptop and we're going to bang out some quick PHP code or whatever, and we're going to, hack into these sensors that you've put into the ground and things like that, and it's going to bypass the encryption, firewall, security, whatever. And at the same time, it's like, that's not really the specialty of who you're trying to catch. Like, you're not trying to catch the next greatest hacker. You're trying to catch, people who are trying to smuggle people across the border. They're running on their own 2 feet. They're quickly trying to get people across. They're not trying to hack into any kind of system. So, like, when someone says all tech can be hacked and defeated, this is ultimately useless. At the same time, it's like, it's complicated enough that, nothing is perfect, but at the same time, to defeat it in the way that they're kind of insinuating would take so much more time, so much more energy, so much more effort than it would to just try to run right past it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, because you think about it, and again, we respect everybody has their right to their opinion.
Of course.
Everything in tech, could it be defeated? Sure. Can everything be hacked to some degree? Absolutely. But to your point, if somebody's trying to smuggle $1 million worth of illicit drugs across the border, they're not trying to sit there and figure out, are there sensors that could possibly detect my cell phone that I could hack into to defeat so I could sneak my drugs across. They're looking over their shoulder and running as fast as they can because they don't want to be shot. So their mind is on something really different if they're doing something illegally. The cost for, be it our technology or be it cameras or anything else, sure, there's costs involved in all security. Do you have a security system in your home or at your business or in your car? Absolutely. Can they all be hacked, or is there a back door to everything? Absolutely. But we always share with people the importance of layers of security.
Yeah.
That's what slows down bad people from doing bad things and gives good people a chance, the police, the Border Patrol, whoever it is, a chance to catch them, to stop them in the tracks. Somebody wants to climb a wall, rob your house, steal your car, hack your computer, they will do it at whatever it takes if they really want to do it. You can't stop them, in my opinion. But
Right.
You can slow them down and make their job hard. And that's really what really security business, I think, is all about, stopping the bad guys, slowing them down, so it gives the good guys a chance to catch up and take the lead.
Yeah, and that's really, people are not trying to, or, crime in today's day and age is not Ocean's 13 or whatever. It's just what's most effective, and that's really, like you said, layers. That's why whenever we talk about in the consumer space, just make yourself two-factor authentication, complex passwords, that kind of thing. Just like, it's not we're not asking you to go install something on your computer that's super super high tech. It's just be safe. Be more effective than the next person, because they're going to move on rather quickly. So Scott, with that being said, we have about a minute here, and I think we're going to go ahead and introduce the next topic, and then we're going to come back and get into it. So everyone, we're talking with Scott Schober. He's our resident cybersecurity expert, and of course, author of Hacked Again. If you want to check out more of his writings, more of his videos, everything like that, hackedagain.com or scottschober.com. Check it out. And on top of that, when we come back, we are going to be talking about how gamification can boost cybersecurity, because everything is better with video games. So everyone, Scott Schober, he'll be joining us right after this, and everyone else. If you missed any part of today's show, including the very beginning, kind of rocky, but it's okay. Wherever podcasts are heard, including iTunes, search Computer America, and we should pop right up. There you go. Everyone, we'll be right back. More Computer America right after this. Stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour, and everyone, one more time, if you missed any part of today's show, wherever podcasts are heard, and hey, we've updated our streaming page, so if you would like some variety and some choice as to where you happen to get your podcasts, we have everywhere Computer America is at computeramerica.com on the streaming page right there. So everyone, there you go. Let's go ahead and of course reintroduce our guest. He's joined us in the first half hour, and he will finish out the show with us, Mr. Scott Schober, author of Hacked Again, resident cybersecurity expert. And yeah, so just before the break, we covered, two great topics, and we have a bunch more to go over, but I did want to get into this next one. And the idea of gamification comes up on the show pretty often. I mean, I think the last time we talked about it, we talked about gamification when it came to training people on not cybersecurity, but I think it was things like tech support and different tech topics. Although I guess it does fit in nicely with cybersecurity. So information age, anyone out there watching the video portion, you can follow along. But Scott, what caught your eye about gamification?
Well, first of all, I love games. I'm a game enthusiast from a long time ago. I may have shared in the past. I grew up as a kid hooked on games, playing Atari, Apple computer. I collected every game known to man. I still enjoy games to this day. I have a Centipede cocktail table in my office and another upright Centipede arcade game machine, and I love the classics as well as all games. Just it engages people, and I think really that's what kind of caught me to this. For cybersecurity, one of the biggest problems is the ability to effectively train people, to get them engaged. So it's really a people problem. People get bored quickly. If you throw up a PowerPoint slide or have a talking head in front of you telling you create a long password, use multi-factor authentication, don't click on emails you're not familiar with. You pretty much tune them out, unfortunately. I present often to many crowds at different trade shows and events, and I'm often asked to come in. I'm hired to share security tips, to share what I've learned, talk about my book, talk about my products and how it keeps companies safer, so on and so forth. And if you don't engage people, get them excited and let them talk, let them hear how other people, what they've done, good, bad, and ugly, it becomes very boring. And gamification, I feel, takes it to the next step. You can effectively train people, they'll remember what they learn, and they have fun doing it. So it's kind of, to me, a win-win-win. Many companies are even trying to get the people involved, the staff, the employees, by offering prizes, by creating coins, get a free meal on the boss, go out for dinner if you score the best on this. So it's a really great way to, again, engage people into doing things that are kind of mundane and boring that they don't want to do and don't want to learn.
That has been and I'm mentioning gamification in other areas, and that includes teaching kids basic things like history and math and things like that, especially math. And we had a teacher on, and he said that's really the next biggest area for teaching is tricking kids into enjoying learning. And if you can weave that thing that video games do very, very well, which is that psychology where you want to progress to the next level, you want to take it one more step and get that reward and have that that constant feedback. If you can apply that to learning something useful, then you really get something special. So I guess being able to do this and let's see, so there's a part here that I think really does lend itself very well to it. And that includes things like social media challenge, where you could, potentially help your company by not messing up your social media and, being protective of it and things like that. It's a good strategy. So I hope to see more of it, especially as a teaching tool. But at the same time, I guess there's still room there for someone to stand in front of a large crowd and go, hey, don't use the password. That it's just that simple. So
yeah, I think
there's a balance.
That is always needed to some degree. And there's an interesting stat, Ben, in the article too, that one person was quoted there, and they mentioned that by gamification, cybersecurity as a whole, it reduced training time by 33%.
Oh yeah.
So it's really a numbers game, isn't it? When you're running a company and you're trying to train your staff, you want them to be trained, you want them to retain the information, put it to practice, but at the same time you realize it costs money to train people. It takes time away from the job at hand. So gamification saves on several fronts, and hopefully it's going to be adopted across the board by more and more companies. There's some great companies out there. I always recommend to people KnowBe4. They're an awesome company. They provide simulated phishing and a lot of different types of training. And I think them, as well as many other companies, are now starting to more seriously look at bringing that component of gamification, so people will have a lasting response when a phishing email is thrown in front of them. They're going to say, "Hey, remember that funny game we played when this company came in and I won? I'm not going to click on this attachment anymore. No way. It looks suspicious." And they're sharing that information with others, hopefully, and it's really just bringing it up as far as a conversation and putting it to practice. So it'll affect the company's bottom line in the end if they're employing these type of techniques, I think. And again, it just makes it fun. We all love games. Who doesn't?
Yeah, two things. Something doesn't have to be serious for it to really make an impact. I remember I had a geology teacher in college, and I did not major in geology. It was never my focus. Very interesting, but just not. Obviously went for IT, but or computer science, I should say. But I will say that the one thing I remember was a joke he made, and he said, he was teaching us about tombolos, and he said, tombolo in Italian, or that's Italian for tombolo. And it was such a stupid joke, but hey, I remember what a tombolo is. It's Yeah. So like, just because something isn't serious doesn't mean it doesn't make an impact. And I will say, if anyone out there is interested in this kind of thing, we did an interview, and let me get the exact dates. This was back in December 2018, December 11th. We had a company on called Reflare, and they do exactly that. They have, Scott, I'm not sure if you've ever seen or tried a website called Duolingo, but it's a kind of like a language learning system. Yeah. So it's very similar to that. They have like training modules, and it's for IT security training. It's for it's for your IT people. It's for your front end people. It's developers, administrators, employees, and it takes that kind of gamification Duolingo strategy and applies it to just basic concepts of security. So Reflare, December 11th, 2018. Decent art, decent show if you want to check that out. But like you said, I hope to see it more, and there are some very clear positive benefits to it. So there you go. There's that one. And so I was kind of waffling on this one, but it's from the same website that we covered at the beginning of the show, and it's about healthcare again, but that's okay because healthcare, as we said before, is an ever increasing target for hacking. And I think, one thing that we didn't, or I certainly didn't mention before, the reason for that is because medical data is kind of one of those things that, if you lose your medical data, you can change your password, you can change your email, you can even change your address if you feel like it. You can ask for another social security number, although it's very difficult. You can change a lot of private information like credit cards and things like that are stolen from you. But if someone steals your blood type, if someone steals your place of birth, if someone steals, your medical data, that's stuff that can't be changed. Your medical history is your medical history, period. And so you have this article here that kind of relates back to our, UConn Health being hacked. Healthcare organizations experience more than one data breach per day in January. So yeah, we said this is a problem that's only going to continue to grow. 3 different reports say that, hey, this is getting worse. Scott, your professional opinion, is it getting worse because, like I said, it's just an attractive source of data, or is it getting worse because nothing is really changing and it's just, people know how easy it is now?
Probably a combination of it. The records are more valuable. You can easily sell them and get a lot more rich information, like that earlier story that we talked about. Couple that with the healthcare industry is so slow to make changes, to upgrade their cybersecurity policies, to secure their networks, to train people, that it's ripe for the picking. And hackers know that. They see, hey, we can monetize on this, and it's still not secured. Let's keep beating at it until they actually reinforce it, and then we'll move on to another target. And just the headlines that caught my interest here as I started to think about it, if there was in January 33 data breaches and the problem's getting worse, if you extrapolate that over the course of a year, you're talking 300 to 400 data breaches just in the healthcare organizations. That's scary. That's telling you they're not doing a good enough job to make a difference. They're not taking it serious, and it's our information that's out there. As there's advances in the field of medicine and healthcare, we're going to be having our fingerprints exposed, biometric data exposed, personal information beyond just things that we scribble onto paper. And when that information is compromised, as you put well, you only have one biometric. You only have one thing for your iris that identifies you uniquely to your iris. When that's compromised, it's game over. So it's going to get much worse, I think, before it gets better, unless they start taking this serious.
So one thing I want to mention here is that, and this is just a quick Google search. You can look up Community Health Systems. They run a system of 188 different hospitals. Hospital Corporation of America, HCA, runs 166. You're looking at these things that run, and like each one of those hospitals, I practically grew up in a hospital when I was younger. they are just hundreds of employees and, people coming in and out and thousands of patients and so many different access points. And when you run so many of these things, like let's say one system gets compromised in one of these hospitals, you're suddenly, just like the one at UConn Health, one hospital led to 326,000 patient records potentially being compromised. If one of these systems is compromised with 188 different hospitals, you're looking at tens of millions in just a single breach. I mean, another part of it is just that our healthcare is getting more connected as time goes on. More hospitals are being bought by these large associations that, hey, maybe in the future when a singular hospital is compromised, that means the network is compromised, which means, even more medical data is compromised. It's just such a treasure trove. It's like you said, they're so slow to move. It's hard to imagine that they're going to be able to keep ahead of this.
Yeah, I do think it's very difficult. And then, and unfortunately, both my parents have been in and out of the hospital for the past 2 years with some major stuff. I'm also noticing more and more how much of the medical devices are now wirelessly connected into the network.
Oh, for sure.
Envision in a worst-case scenario, you've got a enraged hacker / terrorist that just wants to hack a hospital and wants to take down a particular target that's hooked up to something that's wirelessly monitoring that person. If they could navigate their way through, they could identify the patient, they could target them, they could now perform a ransom, just like ransomware, but really for a specific wireless medical device. It sounds crazy far-fetched out of the movies, but it's actually 100% doable if somebody has a focused target that they're really looking toward that they want to monetize.
I've been in the hospital too, much more than I'd like to admit lately, with family members, and you're completely right, where they have these carts that they push around that have everything on like a singular cart, and they scan wristbands, they administer medication, they take payments, they monitor health and vitals, like everything is on like these wireless systems. And hey, someone could probably just sit in the patient waiting room and with a couple of pieces of hardware that I'm sure you're much more familiar with, you could probably at least see them on a network, if not directly access them just from the patient waiting room. It's it's not that far fetched. So, hey, perfect. We scared everyone. This is good. Now, okay. So let's see. We have two more here, and I think though I want to, before we get to the Congresswoman asked the Equifax CEO for his personal data, which makes a very obvious point that hey, someone who is in the business of collecting personal data would be uncomfortable sharing their personal data. But before we get to that one, I wanted to get to a list because I love lists. They show, just more information is better. And if you're able to either follow people, if you're able to surround yourself, if you're able to immerse yourself in information, this is going to be great. So you have this, and let's see. This is, hey, I know the author of this article, Scott Schober. You authored this article, and it looks like it was changed from the top 20 to the top 25. To the top 25 security experts to follow on social media. And, our answer to that is always Scott Schober. But, you have a lot of colleagues here that you, kind of highlight. So, plenty of time here if you want to go through, mention some names and talk about writing this article.
Yeah, I think these are people that I personally have found have helped me greatly, have educated me, have shared information. Some I've spoken at common security events with, some I've worked with, some I've blogged with, some I follow everything they write, so on and so forth. So in one way or another, these people have kind of crossed my path, and I highly respect them because they've taught me so much and put me where I am today. So I'm grateful for them and just wanted to give them a little shout out and share some of the things that they've done that has helped me. So I encourage people, if you're into cybersecurity, if you're a techie, take a little bit of time. Maybe if you're a Twitter user, follow these people because they're a wealth of information, and they're happy to share, and they truly are experts. And I think you too will probably be amazed with how quickly you will start to learn from them all.
I am going through and following all of them. I just for future, kind of reference, I think there's a way to like embed Twitter profiles, and I'm not sure, how the article was kind of made, but sometimes it's a lot easier to just kind of put in that little, kind of short code so people could just hit the follow button right there. But going through a lot of these people, I'm surprised that the official Computer America Twitter account doesn't already follow, but yeah, you have some really big names, like obviously Kevin Mitnick, the world's most famous hacker, of course. Brian Krebs, Krebs on Security is, you see him pop up almost every week where he covers in depth something, really, really big. You have, and of course, we've talked about the Hirschevek group here on the show. This is a good list. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. And if you do, just to point out, if you do go to scottschober.com under blogs and click on this one here, I do have all the links from my website you can click on so you can actually follow them, the links to their articles, to videos, all that other stuff. So they're actually hot links on my site.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, and check it out. Yep, right there. So perfect. And everyone, once again, we're going to have a link to that in over at Computer America. So very, very cool. Hey, the website's much more than I thought it was. So, okay, there's that. Let's go ahead and swap back over to that Equifax story. And, it just became such a security kind of cultural touchstone that I think what happened with Equifax, the effects of it are going to be kind of like the BP oil spill a couple of years ago. It's just something that it happened. It was so catastrophic that the true effects are going to be felt for years and years and years to come. So that's why it's kind of like the first thing that comes to my head whenever I talk about a massive security breach. And in this case, here it comes again. So February 26, 2019, just yesterday, Congresswoman asked Equifax CEO for his personal data as she hammers companies' legal moves. So what legal moves is she hammering? What else is there to hammer about this? This is an article from MarketWatch. And yeah, talk about this, Scott.
Well, I think this really caught me, and it kind of gave me a chuckle. My book that's coming out, again, I mentioned probably end of second quarter, third quarter, cybersecurity is everybody's business. I talk a whole chapter just about Equifax because it bothered me so much how many people's personal information that's out there, pretty much without anyone's knowledge or permission, they blew it. So of anybody that should be pounded, I put them up there at the list with maybe Uber and a few other companies such as Facebook that I always have some negative things to say, so I apologize for my rant. But I just love the dialogue here, and I just started laughing as I read this and kind of applauded her for going beyond and pushing it a little bit and saying, hey, would you mind telling us your Social Security number out in front of everybody here? Would you mind sharing your personal information, where you live, and this and that? And it went on, and you could see how he quickly backed off and said, no. But that's exactly what Equifax did. They did everything. They put it all out there. And so shame on Equifax, shame on you. Do something about it now. Let's repair the damage. Let's follow through on this because now they're realizing there are a lot of lawsuits, and it's going to get a lot worse very soon as people are hearing about it. So the conversation is not over. This will drag on for several years, and I find it in one sense very funny, but the other sense I'm glad that the full exposure is actually being talked about now, so people can actually get some resolution to this. Otherwise, it'll be just chalked up as another breach that happened, and move on with life, and maybe don't use Equifax, use TransUnion or somebody else, and that's not the way it should go.
Well, and that's really something that struck so many people was that it's not even about use TransUnion instead of Equifax. Equifax was one of those companies that you never made an agreement with. You never made an account with Equifax, but they had everything on you. And they had more than I think people even realized when it came out that the information that was stolen included things like your past salary to jobs that you thought were confidential between you and your company. Equifax was able to discern that through massive collections, through massive data collection, including employment history, including, your qualifications. Like, so much data was compromised. And by the way, this article just came out a couple of hours ago. And maybe this is why the CEO was acting so dodgy. The CEO of Equifax has had his identity stolen 3 separate occasions. And it really goes to show that anyone is capable of having their identity stolen. And it really doesn't matter, if you feel like your credit's not good enough or things like that. Trust me, someone will find a way to, kind of leverage it. So I don't see this kind of ending. In fact, this is only getting worse. You mentioned that you have negative things to say about things like Uber and Facebook. Facebook is in hot water constantly for collecting too much data. And unfortunately, even with the bad publicity, even with the breaches, even with, just how, like, the uneasiness of it all, it seems like still a good business. And you can talk to this point. It still seems like a good business move to collect as much data as possible, even if it's not at the benefit of the consumer.
Oh, absolutely. From a business perspective, I think you're dead on. And that's what's happening. These large tech companies realize they can make a fortune by collecting and selling your information. Equifax is guilty also. They, too, would collect information and to sell it to companies for profit. And they also provide monitoring services to let you know if your data is compromised, which is so ironic.
One of my favorite stories about, the power of Equifax, and this is something that I think people really didn't know, was that Equifax, the way that they were collecting data, they could tell, let's say you are a software engineer, or let's say you're a cybersecurity consultant, and you are trying to get a contract, you're trying to get a job with a company. Equifax was collecting so much data. Companies could go to Equifax, pay them whatever kind of fee that Equifax was charging, and they could say, on average, employees were getting this much salary, for this much experience, blah, blah, blah. They, like, employers who partnered with Equifax had so much leverage over the individual employee who thought that they would go in with their credentials. They could, ask them for what they felt was a competitive salary, and companies could come back and say, no, here's the facts. Here's what you're worth. There's no arguing with this. And again, I don't think that's good for the job market. I don't think that's good for consumers, but at the same time, it's super good for businesses and it's super good for Equifax. So this is going to happen again. Let's hope. Yeah. I'm sorry?
I was going to add to that. If you think about this, is all about big data, which we've talked about in the past. And I have no problem with companies using big data. What I have problems with is when they collect big data and they use it, but they don't get permission from the victims of the big data, be it you and I and other consumers listening to this. If we agree to it and we wholeheartedly say, yes, I'm willing to take a free email in trade for you using my data for whatever purpose, that's a business exchange. That's okay. In most of these cases, Equifax and Google and Facebook and others, they're doing this behind our back, not disclosing it, fooling us, and in many cases even having us agree, opting in to saying that we can't go after them if they misuse the data or if they get breached or there's a lawsuit. So we have to really be careful what we're agreeing to with these large tech companies.
I can't believe you would have a strong opinion on this after you wrote an entire book. So, and hey, actually, speaking of which, let's turn that down just a little bit. So, Scott, music in the background means that we're just about done. If people want to find out more about what you do, what you write, your other appearances, where can they go?
Certainly reach out to me, social media, at ScottBVS, or jump on my website, scottschober.com. Love to hear from you, good, bad, or ugly.
Perfect. And everyone, we'll include links to those at computeramerica.com. And Scott, until next month, thank you so much for coming on. Great conversation as always. And and have a great month.
Thank you. Yes. Stay safe, everybody out there.
All right. Great advice. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. Always a lot of fun. And until next time, tomorrow we should be playing this is a very special interview tomorrow with Deseritus US. It's about a personal flying craft. If you want to fly, hey, this is a show for you. Everyone, tune in tomorrow, Computer America. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.